What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Taylor Hinton Speaks Is Mine, April 28th, 2026. A little bit chillier out lately, but the weekend was beautiful. Today, the thing that I wanted to chat with you guys about, and again, these conversations and these podcast ideas come from conversations that I have with clients, with people in the DMs, with my friends and family members, maybe some other random posts that I see online that I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. Or sometimes I'm like, you know what, that's a great idea. Let me see how I can utilize this in a piece of content to communicate to my audience. So, all with the purpose of you guys getting better, stronger, fitter, more disciplined, have a better mindset around things. Let's get right into it. Today is all about muscle growth. That's what I'm going to focus on here for you. So, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share the 6 myths that are the most common things people think are what's helping them grow muscle that are literally not beneficial in any way other than to serve your ego. And then I'm going to share with you what the number one thing is that's actually driving muscle growth and how you can ensure that you're doubling down on that one thing. Okay? So most people think that muscle growth feels like something. They feel like it's a burning sensation, or it's a pump, or it's feeling really tired or getting really sweaty. Generally, just the sensation of working really hard and pushing themselves. And those things can correlate 100% with muscle growth. But if you're using that as your gauge to determine whether or not you've built muscle, then you're selling yourself short. You're leaving massive opportunity on the table, and you're not getting as far along as you think that you are. It can be really misleading and frustrating when you actually test how much muscle you've built by using some methods we'll share in a moment here. But this video at the end of it is likely going to be potentially a little bit frustrating for you to listen to. It's going to be 100% eye-opening and definitely very educational for you. Okay? So let's break it down. People are chasing the burn, they're chasing the pump, getting sweaty, or they're measuring how much muscle they're building or how much success they're having by how sore they feel the next day. And none of these actually cause muscle growth. Again, they can correlate or maybe be a byproduct of muscle growth happening, but they're not directly the cause of it. And that's what we're attacking right now today. Okay. And in the notes that I've taken, I'm going to have to be just super transparent here. I've put in here exactly what the solution is multiple times without realizing that I want to make sure that you guys understand the things first that are not actually helpful. So let's go ahead and start off with item number one. The first thing that people think is helping them build muscle, and this is going to get a lot of pushback because I know a lot of you value this a lot, way more than you should. It's a burning sensation. We think that the burn means that it's working. And the reality is, the burn is not growing muscle necessarily. It's creating metabolic stress inside your body. It's forcing your cells to contract and adapt and making them essentially, you're exerting your cells and muscle fibers to the point where they're getting stressed out. That's that burning sensation that you're feeling, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're building muscle. What's happening when you have that burning sensation is there's an accumulation of metabolites, right? This is like the lactic acid that we feel. Talk about like that burning sensation in the muscles, that lactic acid. It's the hydrogen ions inside your cells that are stressing out, screaming at you, saying this hurts a lot. It's temporary discomfort. It's not an actual signal for growth in muscle building. People get fooled by this because it feels intense, right? It creates a strong psychological feedback loop. The more that I lift weights, or the more repetitions that I have, or the more that it burns, the more muscle that I'm building. But objectively, if you were to look back at the last 3, 5 years of weight training experience, if you're there yet, and you think of all the workouts that you've done and how almost every one of them has led to you having some serious burnage of the muscle, but you look at your actual progress objectively, how much muscle have you actually built? Take a look at your photos. Is it a little bit? Is it barely noticeable? Or is it significant? And maybe comparing your results versus somebody else. And without going down that rabbit hole of comparison, I think comparison is a very, very valuable tool, not as a way to depreciate yourself, but as an objective measure for you to ask yourself, am I doing as much as I could? And is as much as I could worth it for me and my lifestyle and my goals? So that aside, comparison can be very valuable, can be very helpful. And if you and somebody in a similar position as you, age, weight, height, gender, if you can find somebody, which you probably can, who you can relatively compare yourself to and ask, damn, they look like they've made 10 times more progress than me. Well, ask yourself, am I actually going for the right sensation? Is the burn actually what's driving growth? Right? It creates, again, that's a very strong psychological feedback loop. But you have to remember too that you can get a massive burn with light weights without creating the right stimulus as I dance around the specific words that you're going to want to hear for the solution, keeping you on the cliffhanger here for a while. But going for a burn with light weights, it's painful. It creates that environment of now your metabolites are fired up and you got a big lactic acid buildup. You're probably going to be pretty sore the next day. But objectively, we know this doesn't actually lead to muscle building. So stop judging your workouts by how much it burns. Okay. Another one here, or sorry, I should say, for example, as I'm reviewing my notes here, 30 reps of banded bicep curls with a 20-second rest, and you did 3 or 4 sets of that, you're going to get a serious burn. Like you're going to feel the muscles burning and screaming at you. But just because they burn, does it mean that you've actually hit failure, for example? Because failure, as a little tidbit, little breadcrumb for you, is one of the things that we want to ensure we are reaching when it comes to muscle growth. Did you actually reach full mechanical failure? Which means despite your greatest effort, you could not move the weight, or in this case, the band, another inch. Because if you're doing that 30 rep banded bicep curl example, you're going to feel that burn maybe around rep 15 or 20 or so, and you can keep going until 30. But if you really, really tried, could you get to 35? Could you get to 40? The answer is probably. You could probably do 50 or 60. Obviously, depending on the band and your strength and blah, blah, blah. But realistically, you could probably do banded bicep curls endlessly and have an insane burn 25% of the way into your 60 rep set. But even at 60, you might find that, damn, I could probably do 61. So, as much as it burns, is it actually making you hit physical, mechanical failure? Your body, despite its greatest effort, will not move that resistance again. It won't lift it up again. That's a huge factor. We stop when we feel a burn, or maybe a few reps into feeling a burn, maybe even 10 reps into feeling a burn. But if you didn't reach mechanical failure, you haven't achieved hypertrophy, fancy term for building muscle. Okay? The pump, item number 2. The pump feels really good, but it means little. The pump is not the goal, it's a byproduct. It's nice to get a pump. I love it. It's awesome. I see so many people, unfortunately, through my anecdotal perspective, I find most people who are working out in the gym are going for a pump. They're not really controlling the weights. They're not going to mechanical failure. They may or may not be getting a bit of a burn, but they're moving the weights rapidly and shoving a bunch of blood into that muscle. Because when you work out, your body says, oh, this area of the body requires more resources. So it starts to drive blood to that area to help it perform better. This is the pump. More blood and water starts to rush to those muscles that are active right now. That expands the tissue, it swells it up, makes it feel tight and hard and bigger than normal. That's the pump. It feels really good. But the pump doesn't mean that you're building muscle. Because again, over the last 3 years, how much weight have you actually increased on Say you're, again, we're just going to use bicep curl as a really simple example on your bicep curl. Are you still lifting the same 15 or 20 pounds? Or have you been able to over time increase that to 22 and a half, 25, 27 and a half, 30, 35, so on and so forth? Because if you're lifting heavier weight with the same exercise and the same repetitions over time, you are getting stronger. And strength is much more strongly correlated with muscle building. Even though, again, it's not directly the cause, it's a really, really good rudimentary way for us to measure it. Rather than just using the eye test with your rose colored glasses or by getting compliments from family and friends, your strength is a really good way to measure how much muscle you're building. It's not the only way, it's not the best way. We can use external tools that you could go pay, a couple $100 for and get some service done at the university to get a DEXA scan or whatever to really look at it. But if you're just using the same rudimentary tools that I've used for the last 20 years, your strength is a great indicator of how much muscle you're building, not the pump. Again, the pump is really just blood and fluid filling up the muscle tissue, temporary swelling, and you get a pump from very lightweight. You can get it from some bigger weights too. It's a little bit harder, but somewhere between light and moderate weight for 10 to 20 repetitions, that's awesome if you want to get a pump. You want to just look good right now for the next 30 minutes, take some cool photos, go to the beach with some friends or whatever. Maybe you're going out to the club and you want your shirt to fit tight. Maybe you're a girl and you want your glutes to have a bit more of a lift in your romper before you go out for some drinks on a patio this Saturday. Maybe you're going to do some hip thrusts, 50 repetitions, put a dumbbell on your lap and band around your knees, and you crank it out, and boom, you got a bit of a glute pump. Nice. But it doesn't actually drive muscle growth. It goes away pretty quickly, the pump, and it doesn't reflect the actual adaptation that you're going for, right? So think of it this way. The pump is a good way to confirm that you're using the muscles that you're targeting. Right now, not all exercises are targeting muscle groups, and that's going to be another conversation. Right, your compound exercises like deadlifts and squats, heavy pressing, that's bench press or overhead press, heavy rowing exercises, pull-ups, lunges, and variations of all six of those different movement patterns. You're not really going to feel so much targeted effort in areas. Sure, you may feel your legs pretty fatigued after squats and your chest and your shoulders after bench press, but you're not targeting specific muscle groups when you're doing those compound exercises. The pump, when you're doing isolated exercises, or we can call them accessory exercises, the way you can think about this is how many joints are moving during this exercise. So, for example, in your squat, your ankles, your knees, and your hips are all bending. So that's multiple joints. That's a compound exercise. In your bicep curl example, there's only one joint that's moving, and that's the elbow joint. If you're doing it incorrectly, the shoulder joint will move too because you're lifting your elbow up, but we don't want to do that, of course. It should be just the elbow that's bending and extending. That's an isolated exercise. You can feel the pump, and the pump's a good indicator that that muscle is working. But your muscles are working all the time, doing everything, just existing and walking around and doing basic shit. So, not a good indicator of growth. Here's another one. Soreness. How sore are you after your workout or the next day or 2 days later? You ever have a workout where you know it was a really good workout? The next day, you actually feel totally fine, but then 2 and sometimes 3 and 4 days later, the soreness starts to kick in. Cool, you had a really good workout. You know that you activated some tissues. You know that you're feeling nice and sore and tired, and that's cool, but it's a correlation. Once again, it's not the causation. Feeling really sore doesn't mean that you built muscle. Soreness actually just really reflects a novel stimulus. So maybe you're normally doing a barbell bicep curl and you switch to doing an incline bicep curl where you're laying down on an incline bench and you're curling the weight up. It's a bit of a different position. You're stressing the muscles at different angles. So it's novel, it's new, it feels different. You're going to feel a lot more sore because you're training the same muscle, but just in a different way. So that's kind of cool because it's expanding, your body's ability to adapt to different stimulus, different ranges of motion, different levers, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're building muscle. It's tissue damage, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's productive either. It's unreliable because you can be sore and not grow muscle. You can just do different stuff all the time and not grow muscle tissue. Perfect example would be CrossFit. In CrossFit, the workouts are different every single day. It's incredible and admirable, actually, how these coaches come up with different exercises and workout routines 365. Of course, many of them are spin offs of a few different ones. But the point is, you can do different shit all the time and get really, really sore and not actually grow muscle tissue. And again, if you've ever done CrossFit, you know that the workouts are different all the time. You know you're definitely sweaty and sore the next day. But how many CrossFitters are you seeing growing massive amounts of muscle just doing CrossFit strictly? Not very often. Not unless they're training at a competitive level where they're training multiple times a day, their diet's absolutely dialed in. And even then, they will grow muscle, but not nearly as much as if they were doing concentrated, focused, hypertrophy styled or bodybuilding styled workouts, which are designed purely for the idea of building muscle, or CrossFit is designed for doing virtually everything else in fitness aside from growing muscle. It's a byproduct of CrossFit, but generally what you're doing there is you're working on your endurance, your muscle conditioning, you're working on your strength, coordination, agility, you're working on your mindset. It's very, very challenging. And you're working on a bunch of different skills that require a lot of balance and, again, coordination. So it works on virtually everything except muscle building. You might happen, but it's definitely not a goal. So people chase this soreness because they think that it feels productive, but again, like it's not actually going to be the driver for your progress. And then here's another one for you. And this will be the final one. So I think I may have said six at the beginning, but if this is four or five, then forgive me. Sweating or just feeling really destroyed after your workout. I use CrossFit as an example already. It's another great way, once again, to say, wow, I'm sweating really, really hard, and damn, I feel just absolutely trashed. That workout was crazy. I'm gonna grow so much muscle when I get home. No, because we have to pressure test this, okay? Can you get really sweaty, really tired, quote unquote, feeling destroyed or absolutely trashed after a big workout if that workout was a 15-kilometer run? For a good runner, that would take you an hour and a half. If you're like, if you're confidently running every single week for distance, like at least a couple 10Ks a day, and you went and did a 15K. Back to the whole soreness conversation. That person who never really does 15K, but always does 10 and does 10 pretty consistently, if once they do 15, it's a novel stimulus. Although it's the same exercise, you're doing it for longer than you ever have. So that in and of itself is novel. That person is going to feel sore. But on top of that, they're 100% going to be sweating their ass off. And because it's the first time they've ever done 15K, they're of course going to feel pretty destroyed. They're going to feel pretty tired afterwards. It's going to be very novel to them. But we know without having to have any educational background in fitness, we know that running long distance isn't a muscle building workout. It's not conducive for building muscle. So we can't just point at being really sweaty or feeling really tired to building muscle. And yeah, you could sit here and go, well, duh, running is different than muscle building exercises. So if I feel sweaty and destroyed when I run, I know that I'm not building muscle. But if I feel sweaty and really tired after doing a muscle building workout, like a bodybuilding style workout, then that must be progress, right? No, not necessarily, because there's a couple factors that are absolutely essential for you to build muscle. And we'll get there in just a second. But you can sweat a ton again doing those cardio workouts. And again, if you're a new person to fitness, so if you're a beginner, then you're definitely going to have some level of muscle gains happening, even if it was just from running. If you take a sedentary individual who doesn't exercise, doesn't really eat very well, and all of a sudden you start getting them to eat an adequate amount of protein consistently, and they slowly build up their running capacity. Maybe they start off with 2K or 3K. And over a few weeks, that comes to 5K. And over a few more weeks, they're now doing 10Ks and blah, blah, blah. The amount of muscle, if we were to measure that person from day one, when they never had exercised, into day 56, after months, I guess a couple months, even just a couple months, call it, what was that? 365 is a year. Cut that in half. We'll call that what? 167 or something like that. 6 months down the road, if that person all they did was run, and then they measured their body fat and their muscle mass percentages, that person would have an increase in muscle. But is that a productive way to do it? If your goal is to build muscle, to tone, to sculpt, to shape, is running going to be the most productive way? No. It can work for somebody who's brand new, but it's not the most productive way to do it. And if your one singular goal is to build muscle, or it's the most important goal at the very least, then you should do the things that are going to be most productive towards achieving that goal faster. Why would you take a more resistant path to the goals that you have in mind? And further to that, if you're somebody who's more advanced, then going from doing your consistent muscle building exercises into adding a bunch of running instead and swapping the muscle building for the running, that person will lose muscle mass. They will lose size. They will lose strength. The muscle doesn't necessarily disappear, but the strength and fullness of those muscles, the ability for those muscles to perform at a level of high intensity with lifting heavy weights will be diminished. So, no. Feeling really sweaty, doing heavy cardio workouts, feeling destroyed afterwards does not lead to muscle growth. But this does. Mechanical tension, item number one. And item number two, proximity to failure. If you can control for those two variables, the proximity to failure and the mechanical tension, those two synergistically lead to the best results. It doesn't matter if the muscle feels pumped up. It doesn't matter if you have a burn in the muscle. Those are irrelevant indicators. Those are egotistical measurables that aren't measurable. They're subjective measuring tools that are based on how you feel. I like doing this because I get a pump. I like doing this because I feel the burn. Cool. I like playing video games all day. I like sitting down and not, I can't even say that I don't like working out. I like to do a lot of running or cardio or playing with my dog, going to play frisbee with my wife. If I could just go throw the frisbee around and throw a ball for my dog and sit around in the sun and get super jacked, I would. But that doesn't lead to the growth. You have to do things that you don't necessarily like. And you have to understand that there are measurable tools that we can use to ensure that we're making progress. And if you're not adjusting for those, then you're just guessing or you're just simply doing things that you like instead. And if that's what you prefer, if that's ultimately the goal is to just simply enjoy fitness, but you don't have a measurable goal of getting bigger glutes or getting stronger and you just want to stay active, then by all means, that's fine. You can be perfectly content and happy staying in maintenance. In fact, I think that everybody should strive for maintenance. Once, of course, you've hit your physical goals, whatever those may be, we want to eventually get to a place where we feel really content being in maintenance. Obviously, we don't want to maintain at a subpar level of fitness. We want to get to that ideal standard that we've set for ourselves. But once you get there, it's nice to be able to just coast for a little while. It's important to set goals and keep pushing yourself, but it's real nice to know that we can just take a break for 6 months or even a year and just relax and enjoy, right? Do some of the things we don't necessarily love just to maintain and prioritize more of the things that we really enjoy, like maybe mountain biking or hiking or running or whatever. And maybe you're doing those muscle building workouts like twice a week because you can manage it because you've already done the hard work to get there. Keeping it is so much easier than getting it in terms of muscle building. So when it comes to mechanical tension, how do we know what that means? Like, what exactly does mechanical tension mean? Well, it simply means how much stress the muscle tissue is under and how hard the muscle fibers are contracting to move the weight or even just to hold the weight. Because you can grow muscle statically. If you're sitting underneath a 300-pound barbell and holding it at the bottom of the position of a squat for 10 seconds and coming up after one rep, you do that over time, you're going to get stronger. You're going to go from 300 pounds to 320, 320 to 330, and so on and so forth. And if your exercise was simply to load a heavy bar, hold the squat position at the very bottom for 10 seconds, and then squat up once to rack the weight again, if you are able to progress that exercise by lifting heavier, adding more weight to that bar over time, you can reliably ensure that you're building muscle because that one hard 10-second hold rep is creating so much tension in the muscle that it has to adapt and grow bigger and stronger. Now, not just mechanical tension, but working in harmony with proximity to failure. Now, failure again is not how tired you feel. It's not how bad the muscle is burning. It's when you physically can't move the weight anymore despite your greatest effort. So if you are lifting with loads that are heavy enough to create a lot of tension in the muscle, and you're doing so at a proximity of 1 to 2 reps shy of failure, you can go to failure too, but oftentimes it's more harmful than good. There's times and places with certain exercises and certain quote unquote pushing phases of your training cycle that it makes sense to go to failure in some cases. But in a lot of cases, going to failure with an exercise just builds more fatigue than the stimulus is worth. So we want to get to somewhere between 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. If you're even within 1 to 2 reps shy of of actual muscle failure, you're going to see muscle growth happening. Now, judging where mechanical failure is, where muscle failure is, will be really hard initially if you're kind of at the beginning stages. Even for people who are, adept or even advanced at lifting, a lot of people have never truly pushed themselves to real muscle failure. So they think that failure is actually probably where 2 reps shy of failure is. So say they're squatting 2 plates, 225 pounds. They do 10 reps and at 10, they're like, holy shit, I could barely get that at those super, super hard. If they had somebody screaming and yelling at them with a gun in their face to do one more rep, they probably would be able to get one more rep. So that's what failure would be. A lot of people think that their failure, a lot of people think that failure is 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. And then they go 1 to 2 reps shy of their perceived failure, and they're actually 4 reps shy of failure. So they're getting a burn and they're sore, and it was difficult. It felt perceptively challenging, but it didn't necessarily grow muscle. So the only way to really know where you're at with that is you gotta test yourself. You gotta know what your wall is. And that means that if you haven't done this yet, or it's been more than 6 months since you've done this, maybe more than a year since you've done this, go ahead and aim for failure. Pick a weight that you think you could do for about 6 repetitions. Maybe not on squat or deadlift because they're high risk movements. Pick something that is easy to dump or to just drop the weight and you'll be fine. Machine based exercises are great for this. Leg press is great, chest press, any type of pulling exercises because you can simply drop the weight, even free weights. Like imagine doing a barbell bent over row. You could simply do that and that would be fine too, right? But my point is, you have to find out what your wall is. And then from there, you scale back the intensity to 1 to 2 reps shy of that. The combination of that tension in the muscle and that proximity to failure are the only two factors that you should ever concern yourself when it comes to, am I growing muscle tissue? The thing is, here's the most challenging part of the whole thing. The most challenging part, because this is a pretty simple concept, right? Okay, I need to lift really heavy weight. And I need to make sure that I'm actually pushing myself genuinely within 1 to 2 reps shy of failure. That's a really simple concept to interpret. Doing it's the hardest part, and doing it over and over and over and over again for years on end. That's the part where everyone falls off. Everyone falls off at the point where it's really, really challenging and they don't want to keep going through that physical pain. It takes a lot out of you. It's very exerting. It's very challenging. You're going to be very fatigued. You're at some point or another going to hurt yourself lifting weights. But lifting weights and hurting yourself in a controlled manner when you're in a safe environment is way better than by doing something random and unexpected and twisting your ankle and being out for 6 to 12 weeks or breaking something because you didn't have the strength in the first place to do it. So I'd much rather injure myself while really focusing in on doing my absolute best to control my body, control the weight, moving in a smooth, controlled manner, and inevitably pushing the limits a little bit too hard, getting hurt, having a couple weeks setback, and then recalibrating from there. Because now you know where you're at, you know where your deficiencies lie. And if you're smart enough, you're going to be able to find a way to work around it to keep pushing yourself hard without increasing risk of injury or exacerbating that current injury. That takes a lot of creativity, a lot of experience, or it takes a really good coach to help you work through that and navigate it properly. So stop worrying so much about the burn. Stop worrying how much you're sweating. Stop worrying about the pump or how tired or fatigued you are. All of those are subjective, immeasurable indicators. But if the weight falls off your back or you physically can't lift it anymore, then you know for sure that you're getting there. So you might ask, well, if I can just get to 1 to 2 reps shy of failure and the tension's great enough, does it have to be really heavy weight? Or can I lift light to moderate weight and get there? And the answer is yeah, you can. You can lift light to moderate weight and get the same results. You actually can get the exact same level of results as if you were to lift heavy. So you might be asking yourself, well, then why wouldn't I just do that? Because wouldn't it be safer? Because if I fail with lighter weight, the risk of injury should be lower, right? Logically, that makes sense. And the answer to that also is true. It's probably, in some cases, safer to do lighter weights for more repetitions, and you can still reach mechanical failure and have immense mechanical tension on the muscle because those two things are the only thing that's necessary to achieve. So why wouldn't we do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I think doing any one modality of fitness exclusively, unless you're a competitive athlete, is ultimately detrimental to your fitness overall. I think if you genuinely want to be the best version of yourself, you need to do a wide variety of different endeavors. Even if it's all with the same goal. If the only goal is building muscle, but you only approach it from one perspective by only lifting heavy or only lifting light weights, then you're missing some of that novelty in your movements. And the muscles may be really good at doing light weights for a lot of repetitions, but when it comes to placing a heavier systematic demand on the entire body, not just the muscles, but the bones, ligaments, tendons, central nervous system, there's a missing element that you haven't tapped into yet because you just are avoiding that. So do whichever one you prefer more often. Sure, we can go with that, but don't eliminate the option of doing something else now and then too. I would say at the very least, every couple of weeks, you should be doing something a little bit different. It's the same training program, it's the same protocol, but maybe you're mixing it in every now and then. Now, truthfully, I don't make those types of adjustments every 2 weeks with my clients. It's maybe every 6 to 8 weeks or so. And we'll shift from doing some exercises that are lower reps to some exercises that are higher reps and so on and so forth without getting into the weeds of it. That's a whole nother topic on itself. But here's the other reason, and probably the most important reason why you wouldn't just simply do lighter weights for more repetitions, even if you can build as much muscle through mechanical tension and muscle failure, because those two things must be present. A really good reason why you wouldn't do that is because it is so much harder for us to perceive what muscle failure is with light repetitions. And thinking back to the very beginning of this episode where I mentioned the band exercise, bicep curls for 30 repetitions, it's going to be really hard for you to know when you're actually at failure versus it's just so painful that you need to stop. You're going to get to a point where the muscle is burning and screaming so bad that you're going to want to drop the weight. So somebody you could say, "Oh, well, that's just a weak mindset. You got to keep pushing through the burn." Yeah, okay, cool. That's a nice sentiment, I guess. But take that why would you take that, like, we'll call it a risk of not actually getting the results that you want for the sake of doing lighter reps? Because it's going to be very hard to judge if you've hit muscle failure when you're doing that many reps because it just burns so bad. But when you're doing, say, like 6 to 8 repetitions, when you hit a wall, you hit the wall. It's really clear that the weight won't move again. When you're doing that banded bicep curl, you might eventually hit genuine muscle failure, but you could probably shake your arms out for like 10 seconds and crank out another 15 reps if you really wanted to. So, did you actually reach muscle failure even though it felt like it? Or was it really just super, super painful and you needed a second? I think there's also something to be said about getting injured with lighter weights. Because with lighter weights, people are generally not concentrating as much on their technique, on their form. So they kind of swing the weights around a little bit more willy-nilly because of this perception that, oh, it's really light, I can't hurt myself. When you're doing that over and over and over and over and over again, that multiple repetition of just consistently doing it over and over and over again, that will lead to injuries. And anybody who's worked a physical labor job knows this to be true. Even actually people who sit down at a desk and they're sedentary all the time. Like your back and your hips are sore and tight. And it's not like they're working really hard. It's just because they're in the same position and they have to be forced in that position for multiple hours on end. If you're a carpenter and you're, I guess in the 1800s, and you're using a handsaw to cut 2x4s in half, I'm left-handed. I'm not switching my hand from left to right all the time. I'm going to be as efficient as I can and be as precise as I can. I'm going to use my good hand. So my left arm is constantly, it's not heavy weights. I can do a million reps of using a saw forward, backward, forward, backward. Each time I make a cut, each time I push it forward, that's one rep. Each time I pull it back, that's one rep. This is hundreds of thousands of reps, or I should say hundreds slash thousands of reps every single day over and over and over again. Lightweight, lots of reps. Inevitably, your joints are going to be really sore. They're going to be really tired, and you're likely going to have some joint pain and inflammation. So, just because it's lightweight doesn't mean it's automatically going to be injury free. And we do know by fact that lifting heavy weights forces not just muscles, but bones, ligaments, joints, and tendons to all adapt as well. Very similar to the way that your muscles do. Your muscles get bigger to compensate for the work that you just did the previous day. You work super hard, you create a novel stimulus, you create, an adaptation by forcing a lot more weight than your body is ready to handle right now, and you hit that failure. That triggers your body to say, we need to build this area of the body bigger and stronger so that we can be resistant against that type of damage again. That's the whole point of that's the process of muscle building. You break down your body to the point where it says we need to grow this bigger and stronger. You sleep, recover, eat well, muscle grows. You go back to the gym when you're recovered, you lift heavy and you do it again. And you keep repeating that process. And over time, the muscles get bigger and stronger to compensate for that weight that you're lifting. You have to lift heavier and heavier weight so that you can continue creating that stimulus, that damage that needs to be repaired again, and so on and so forth. So doing that over time, it's not just making the muscles bigger and stronger, but the joints, ligaments, tendons, bones are all getting denser and stronger. So they're going to be by default more resistant against injury. So don't just do heavy weights, don't just do light weights, do a combination of both. Rotate every 6 to 8 weeks. Make sure that you're tracking your weights, lifting heavier over time. You're measuring your weight, you're measuring your inches on your waistline. Maybe you're measuring your thighs, your biceps to see how things are growing as well. And if your chest, legs, arms are growing because you're measuring them, and then you measure your waist stays about the same, then you know that you are building muscle tissue and you haven't put any fat on your waistline. Cool. That's awesome. That's another good way to test it. So That's all that I have for you for today. Have an amazing rest of your day. I'll see you on Friday for our Form Friday if we have some clients that post some videos so we can give you guys some help on feedback on that stuff too. If you're finding value in this, share it with somebody. Love for you to subscribe. We have 750 downloads was the last update that I got from Buzzsprout, which is the platform that I use to upload my podcasts onto Apple Podcast. So thank you so much to everybody who's downloaded episodes. I appreciate you. I'm glad that you guys are getting value out of it. Shoot me a message on Instagram at HintonNation_coaching. You can just search my name up, Taylor Hinton. Should pop up there. Um, Ask me a question. Let me talk about some things that you have questions about on the podcast, things that you can reflect on and listen to later over and over again if that helps. And if you want help with your fitness directly and some one-to-one coaching, pop in the DMs. I'll ask you a few questions. If we're a good fit, we'll book a call. And from there, we can see if it makes sense for us to work together. So that's it. Hope you guys all have an amazing day. Peace out. Take care.